See,
All right, thanks, man.
Sleep going.
All right. Yeah.
Good.
Well done.
There are times
Now
where
his wife.
Okay, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We're going to start with approval of tonight's agenda. Do we have a motion to do so?
I'll move to approve the agenda as shown.
I'll second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, comments from the public. I don't believe we have any.
Mr. Chairman, we do not.
All right, well, then we'll move along. We're just going to speed through here to, as you may or may not know, this is my last meeting as chairman, and we're going to vote for, or have recommendations for a chairman, and then we'll do a vice chairman for next year. So at this point, I'm looking for a nomination for chairman.
I would nominate Pete Morris as chairman.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
I mean, he's been the vice chair, so I think it makes sense.
I think you can do it.
Yeah, I think so.
We'll work through it. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? How about vice chair? Do we have any nominations?
I move to nominate Ryan Mattingly as the vice chair.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
If elected, will you serve?
I absolutely would be happy to.
I'd move nominations be closed and to call the question.
All in favor of Ryan being vice chair?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Congratulations, gentlemen. All right, let's move on to cell phone policy change discussion. Okay, what we had a discussion last meeting based upon Pete and I's walkthrough of both Calapoola and North Albany Middle School and talking with the teachers. And I'll kind of recount that story a little bit. I walked in, we said hello to the principals, and we took about 10 steps in, and I just came to a full stop. Because up on the wall was a sign that said no cell phones. And I said, wait a minute, how long has that been going on? They said, well, a couple years. I said, how'd that go? Well, it was a little rough the first year, but now things have calmed down and things are quiet and the kids are learning better and we have a lot less disruption. That's cool. And then North Albany Middle School said the exact same thing because they had also banned cell phones. So during those discussions, the principals had asked for us to make it a policy because it makes it a little bit more enforceable and a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Somebody help me out here.
Universal?
Yes, thank you. That's a great word. So we ask that we have Chris draft up a policy, and this is the looking at the policy for the first time with the intention of bringing it back at our next meeting for approval. So we have some time to discuss this, and so I'd like to open the floor for that discussion.
Yeah, I've got a couple things.
Sure,
I have a lot,
please.
kind of a lot of thoughts on this one. If I put it all together, you know, as this came up, I've been thinking about the role that the board plays, the role the district plays, the role the principals play, the role the teachers play. Nobody has a different sort of role to play. And my experience in education tells me that oftentimes a mandate that isn't supported is very difficult to enforce down the line. And so I think the trick here in a district, this is always a trick in a district our size, and this is no different, but flexibility combined with consistency is difficult, but sometimes they're opposite each other, but I think we need to be both here. So we need to try to figure out a way, because we need to control cell phones. But I think the best way to do that is for staff and principals to say, this is the rule, and for us to support that rule. And I want to support them all the way up to, including taking phones if that's what happens as part of a progressive process. But I don't want to mandate that they're taking phones if they're not feeling like that fits in with their culture of how they want to manage it in their school either, right?
Sure.
At the same time, I don't think it's super great if Calapooya takes all phones at the beginning of the day and Memorial lets every kid do whatever they want all day. That's not good for us either, right? So I'm sort of talking in circles saying, I think a lot of this falls on district leadership and building leadership to create a system that everybody's bought into, that looks roughly the same across the district, and makes it really clear that we believe cell phones in class are a disruption to the learning environment. And we, the board, support the rules in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. And we're not afraid of taking phones, because I don't really buy into the whole, I need to get a hold of my kid all the time and all day long. I just don't buy it. We did that when I was in school and all you guys were in school. We didn't have cell phones and our parents did just fine without being able to get a hold of us during class. So that's what I had to say on that.
Go ahead.
I think one of the things that is become very apparent is the administrators and the staff want something like, but I think we set the bare minimum, you know, and give flexibility to everybody. I think everyone can agree that, you know, cell phones out during a class makes no sense, right? I mean, we've all been at the dinner table with our kid and have them on their cell phone, or, you know, and we know they're not paying attention to us, you know? So I think for us to have any chance to get the kids to learn like they need to learn, we need to accept the fact that we can't have them on their cell phone in a classroom, right? Now, what that means during pass periods or lunch period and things like that, I think that's something we allow to the discretion of that building, you know, and I think it's really good that we're talking about it verbally so everyone can get their 2 cents in a little bit, and that's including parents. You know, I think the other thing that's really important is we have to have Andy and the staff understand that a parent needs to be able to get a hold of their kid in a appropriate amount of time. That doesn't maybe mean 10 seconds, you know, but, you know, if they need to get a hold of their kid and it takes 10 or 15 minutes to get your kid, I think that's totally appropriate.
Yeah, I think just having a uniform policy with having a generic not in class, I think is a good thing. I think with the way that some of this language is written, granted it's just a first reading, but it could be seen as like overly constrictive, whether it's from district, because it said one thing it mentioned was district sponsored activities, which is anywhere from sports games, from whatever that is, in the evening, where it's like we don't want to have any jurisdiction over that. If it was something that was just restricted more to along the lines of during class time, I think would be a lot more constructive, and also give different schools the support they need, but to go back to a policy, but also the ability to have a uniform baseline, while still enforcing it how they choose to enforce it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. All right, go ahead.
I would, not to put Susie on the spot, but Susie, you're a principal. What would help you? You know, I mean, the reality is the principals are either doing it or they're not, and they're either holding that enforcement or not. And in the building, it depends on the teacher. You know, I talk to my kids. It depends on I asked them, like, so what happens? Well, you know, some teachers let us and some don't. You know, and my concern there is anyone who's raised kids knows if you and your spouse aren't seeing eye to eye on a rule, that rule doesn't exist. You know, so I think the idea of setting the lowest bar that, you know, the vast majority can agree upon and then giving flexibility to the staff makes the most sense. But I'd love to hear what you would think about that.
I think it's super important. I think it's super important, and when I was a principal, we did our why for our students, and we did a lot of research and wrote it so that they understood exactly why we were doing what we were doing, because I think it's important for students to understand the why behind it. And as a district, I think that's super important. If we are going to say that we don't believe in use of cell phones during class time, why? And about the impact on learning in the classroom. So I do think it would be a nice thing for us as a district to have a universal policy.
Roger?
So the goal of no cell phone activity in the classroom during class is a good and noble goal. I don't know how anybody could object to that. I think we could state tonight that's our goal, or that's our not yet approved policy. The question for me is how you get there. And I think the issue is much bigger than cell phones in the classroom. And so, and the consequences of cell phones in the classroom is challenging as well. I am not comfortable interfering in the communications between students and parents. I'm just not. And so for me, there's a substantial difference between passing a policy that says you can't be on your phone in the classroom and saying you can't bring your communication device to school. And of course, that changes probably building to building and grade level to grade level. I'm also not comfortable with some component of the enforcement of this, and that I would not want to ask or instruct teachers to physically remove a cell phone from a student's hand. I think that's asking for trouble, and it's either not happening now, or people are figuring out how to do that in a way that minimizes conflict. But that's concerning. If we got to a place where we were, and I think we're not, because I've not heard of an example of it, of everybody dropping their cell phone off in a basket on the way into a classroom, would be concerning for a couple of reasons. One would be the security of those phones and the liability to the district should just the phone get stolen, or the information then on that phone be disseminated to the others. That would be a huge invasion of privacy. These phones are also, they're a little bit germy too. I think the local public health authority wouldn't want all the germs in a wicker basket to be picked up and transmitted to each other. And I'm getting in the weeds a little bit, but just in the short time I've had to think about this, some of the challenges. In 2018, after the Oregon State baseball team won its national championship, that fall they had a Beaver baseball camp for kiddos. And my kid was one of those kiddos. I think he was 11 or 12 at the time. And there were a couple hundred kids there, and there was a lot of enthusiasm there. And bless his heart, Coach Pat Bailey at the time gave this rousing motivational speech that the last 5 minutes of it was the potential perils and evils of your cell phone. And if he said, if you want to be an Oregon State baseball player, this is not your friend, this is your enemy. And I thought at the end of 5 minutes, had there been burn barrels there, the phones would have gone in it, and we would have drank the Kool-Aid, and off we go. And so about 45 minutes later, I'm watching my son, and there's a gal standing next to me, and she's watching her kid. And I said, wow, what a great speech. Boy, that will be very helpful to those kids. And I was really pretty enthused about that. And she said, yeah, not so fast. Look around here. And the outside of the facility was lined with parents. 75% of the parents, while their kid is there. Beaver baseball camp. Adley Rushman is pitching to them. They're on their phone. And so what do we do as adults, and what kind of example are we setting? What, if any, responsibility do we have to address more about cell phone usage and screen time than just the cell phone in the classroom? And I guess that's a bigger conversation. I've talked to teachers who support this, absolutely support it. It's a never-ending battle. These kids and their cell phone in the classroom and open, and we have to enforce it. And so my concern is we're going to pass something which we're now going to require teachers to attempt to enforce that they may or may not be doing now, that they may or not be comfortable with. Very pragmatically, and I'll just throw this out there, and maybe because I read it on the internet, on my phone, it might not be true, but it would appear that you can do things with a classroom, with wallpaper, to make a cell phone not operable in that classroom. You eliminate enforcement issues, you eliminate all the other things I've raised about security and kids having to be sent down to the office because they can't comply with the rules. So I welcome the conversation because it's a serious problem. I do think that we need to engage the public in it. I have not a single day in my life of a track record of being a successful cell phone sheriff. I don't. There's some in our organization who do. I'd love to hear from them. Would also like to hear from parents and some students as well, because if we're going to do this, we need to have buy-in from the entire organization and the entire community. Because if we do this right and we get buy-in, the learning experience will improve for kids. If we don't do it right, we could make no similar effort in which we could irritate more people in a shorter amount of time than doing this. And so there seems to be a cycle of this going around, and I commend the chair and the vice chair for looking at this and working on it for some time. But certainly it's not as simple as us passing policy and then we go out and walk around the building and declare victory. So I don't know what the process is going to be. We don't have a meeting for a while, and so I'm interested in hearing about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's fraught, right? No matter what we do, somebody's gonna get ticked off about it. I think for me, just a couple examples, right? I read a little bit about this. There's a school that is letting kids keep their phones, can't use them. They have to turn them in to get a bathroom pass, right? So they're not using it during class and they're not using it in the bathroom during class. Another school is picking them up at the beginning of the day, locking them in a bag and unlocking them when the kids leave, right? So there's a range of things that you can do. And again, I think it comes down to sort of what the community is willing to tolerate, what the leadership is willing to enforce. For me, somebody's going to get upset. Somebody's going to complain about it. And the answer to that is, geez, I had no idea that would upset anybody. Or we kind of knew people would get upset and we made this choice anyway. And I'd rather be in column B, right? Like we think about what we're going to do, why we're doing it, what the why is, and we know some people are going to be upset by it, and we're going to go ahead and accept that level of upsetness because we think it's that important. And by we, I mean the district, the teachers, and the leaders that are having to enforce it on a daily basis, and the majority of the community members too. So I do think, I think that's it, right? Is we need feedback and we need to figure out as a community how do we land on this and how are we going to make it work?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Pete and I have been working on this for a while, and we did a little bit of research, and we found out that 3 of the 4 middle schools currently ban cell phones, 75%. The rest of them, the other middle school has limited use. So there's already been some restrictions. And I kind of see it as 3 different levels of cell phone usage. You've got elementary, middle, and high schools. And each one's a little different and different maturity level. And I could see there being some differences in those levels. But one of the things that was said earlier is that we need some consistency among the schools, and I think especially among the grade levels. So as the kids go up and get into higher grade levels, there's an expectation already of what they can and cannot do with their cell phones. And I can also see that in high school, you've got more mature students that understand what a mute button is and understand how to turn the stuff off, and maybe they have more freedoms with it in passing and at lunch and whatnot than maybe middle school or elementary would. So those are some thought processes that can go into this to try to stratify the cell phone usage or lack thereof in the schools.
I was just say, I think the why of trying to increase the amount of attention and the amount of learning in classroom is ideal, and that's the ultimate goal. I just think doing it as minimalistically as possible to avoid as much disruption and confiscation type situations would be my personal representative goal in doing that process. But
Andy, yeah, please.
You
yeah,
have more?
go.
So just a couple things. This is an adopted policy currently in place that you're looking at tonight, right? And so this would be changes. For example, students may not use district equipment to access social media sites, but that really doesn't address phones. So there's obviously work to be done there. The second thing is, much like several of you have already spoken about, there are leaders in this district who have taken their school community through that, right? And there's a lot of dust shaken up as you move into that and kids get used to it. It's a real change in behavior, right? And so how we would gather that information is a little more problematic in the summer to turn this back around, but we could do a quick survey to parents, those kind of things as well. Keeping in mind, though, that sometimes online surveys can develop more emotional responses than otherwise might be the case, right? And so I really like what Susie said about developing the why, and I think that as well happened at Calapooya. But I do think that there are processes that people use that are not placing them where they're in an arm wrestling fight over a phone, right? They have processes that they've built to do that. So, but we can also reach out to our administrators. They may not be answering their phone or their email as often now that we're in close to the 1st of July, but we will work to try to broaden and get some input on that.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
So what do we now do in the way of, to get to the why, in the way of curriculum with students about the use of cell phones, the participation in social media, and is that something that we,
As part of our curriculum, we're teaching against it.
that the kids are educated and informed about the perils of overuse or misuse?
Yeah. So my belief is everything in education is habitual, right? And so you could have a lesson or a week, where you kind of focus on that, but habits tend to be really strong and hard to overcome on just like a teaching basis for a short period of time. And I don't know how much time we would need to do that. So a lot of it is just kind of old-fashioned behavior modification, right? We would have to be committed to changing behavior. And so that's going to be the challenge, right? Because people can say, like, how many families have attempted to limit cell phone time, and then a month later, everybody's on their phone, right? And that is very much what we will face here. We will have to really work what you guys have said about a real commitment, develop a why. That's going to be really important.
Yeah, I can attest to how quiet and calm it was at Calapooya when we walked in there. And the behavior problems that we've been told about weren't present when we were there. Everyone was calm, everyone was in their classroom and attentive. So, and that's, I literally stopped dead in my tracks when we saw that sign. I couldn't even believe it was there. I had no idea. So it is doable. And yes, they had a dust up a little bit at first, trying to get the behaviors changed. But they stuck to it and were successful and have made great strides in behavior improvement.
The other thing I would say is when we think about just behavior and the difficulty, think about the work that Kelsey has done this year on bias incidents. Likewise, you guys would all agree that we want to enforce and stop those. but the habits of the home, right, continue to bring those to us. And we face a huge piece of work to change that. And we have that same discomfort sometimes from adults who are not quite ready yet. So we have this really broad variety of people that are at relative levels of comfort around that. So we have school cultures that kind of present that same way. And so I just think there's a lot of work to make this happen and bring it through. I do think the strength is many of our schools are already there in substance.
Yep.
So
Okay. Gonna go ahead and move on, unless anybody's got something burning. No? Okay. All right, we're gonna move on to superintendent evaluations. As you all know, we went and did our yearly evaluation of the superintendent, and there is a summary that was provided in the board book. And you have a copy in front of you each, and it kind of outlines what the questions were, what the goals were, and then how the scores ranged on each goal. And I won't bore you with reading them all because you can read them all online. But is there any questions or discussions, since we were all kind of part of this and making this evaluation happen? Does anybody have anything they want to bring up or talk about, or say? Pete, go ahead.
I was just really happy that there was lots of comments and a lot of unity in what we saw. You know, I think Andy's done a great job letting us know what's going on, and we've seen what he's doing, which makes it easy to do this kind of thing.
thank you guys for writing comments.
Yeah, and I could see how those are the most valuable.
Yeah.
Because they really get to kind of the heart of what people are talking about. Any more discussion, gentlemen? All right, we're seeking a motion.
I'll move to approve the superintendent evaluation summary.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Superintendent contract extension. Okay, if you take a peek at this, and you have a copy there with some, the only changes are the ones highlighted in yellow. The first one is the term, basically extending the term for 3 years from July 1st of 2024. We missed doing it last year, and so we're kind of getting a little caught up on that. And secondly, we're changing the contract negotiation to June 30th, just to give us a little bit more time. The third thing is that either the board or the superintendent, this is being added, may open negotiations one time per year to bargain economics. The evaluation's been moved to deadline to June 30th, again, to buy us a little bit of time. And there was a change. The superintendent is the only one who has had a President's Day vacation day, and everyone else has a potential of working that, which we just had to do because of inclement weather. So we're striking that and creating a floating holiday, so it can be when it's appropriate.
Yeah, and just to clarify, all other administrators are on President's Day. And if you'll remember, the contract that we agreed to was before I think it was like 6 months before I came. And it was Paul Dikopoulos who was just building that contract. And so there are some lack of alignment with, so I don't know where he got the contract, but he built it there. The original contract called for me to receive this year in compensation not less than what teachers get. I think in all reality, that's quite likely going to be different than what administrators get. And so I did not want to be in a position where I was getting what teachers get and the administrators might get less. And so we will not engage in that until we have settled everything out. And the intent there is not to get more or equal to the teachers' increase, right? I don't think that is a good look in front of the administrators. And so we can hold that and we can just work on something that does not put me in a position where people think, oh, he is trying to get more.
Okay. Any questions? Comments? So So we're seeking a motion on the extended contract.
I would move to approve as presented.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Superintendent comments.
So I'll keep them relatively short tonight. I know we have a group of teachers here that we are trying to get through their presentation early in the meeting. Just wanted to make you aware of just a few things. Number one, we have reached an agreement with a private company that had provided overseas students to Lynn Benton. They typically brought students in from China, and those students, that pathway for students to come to Lynn Benton has dried up, which has left this company with a building on the Lynn Benton campus. And so we have reached an agreement to purchase that building. They have no need for it, and Lynn Benton has told them to move it. And so we purchased that for $100,000. We used a grant to do that, which was created here a couple years ago by Sarah Gelser, and has sat there because we were looking for a site. And I think I mentioned that Patrick Kennedy had discovered that this building was available. It has bus service. It has a lot of things that we can use there for our CTP program, which is our 18 to 21-year-old special education students. And so we think that we can create huge opportunities at Lynn Benton for those students to integrate into that community. So right now we are working with the teachers of that program, special education administrators, bus services, Dave in facilities, and we're working to make sure that that building is good to go by the fall. And that will then clear out the use of, we call it the annex, but it's the old, it's on 23rd or 24th, right across the street from Liberty. Some of that program occurs there. Some occurs behind West Albany High School. Some occurs out at Fir Grove, right? So the kids, we've basically had this program in just whatever space is available. Our intent in the long run is to bring it all together at Lynn Benton. This year, we will use the portable behind West Albany, between Memorial and West Albany. It has a kitchen, and then we will begin to look at other ways that we provide that kitchen and a greenhouse. We have to work out greenhouse access at Lynn Benton. But there are several things that they do in their program that we think are really good, that they like to do with kids, they're learning. And so we're gonna make sure that those things happen this year between the two sites, Memorial and Lynn Benton, with the plan to move all to Lynn Benton. So that's one thing. We bargained again today, and with the teachers, we actually reached an agreement on one article, and feel like that's progressing. There's a lot of work involved. We appreciate the way that the teachers have hung in there, and there's still much work to do. They were willing, and we were willing, to have meetings even in July, but summer schedules seem to defeat that kind of at the end, and so we'll probably be on hiatus here for several weeks. So, but beyond that, most of the time when we're working, feel like things are going pretty well. We did reach an agreement. Last week, we met with teachers. One of the big issues in the district has been professional development. Mr. Zimmerman has sent us a notice that actually by contract, we get together and plan that. That's what the contract called for. I don't know how long it had been since that was ever utilized, or even, right? So interestingly, yet another place in our 120-page contract where there was language. Susie and I met with a group of them, and we just thought it went really well, and that we're going to have some, a real shift in kind of how we do things in terms of learning. But I was really gratified by the give and take in that meeting as well. That's what I have there. I do want to give you guys an advance look at goals. Remember that you guys will vote on those in the fall. And so this is just kind of a general overview of the specific areas. I probably need to be near my microphone. So a really important part of what we need to focus on is just to build a broad base of knowledge in teachers and administrators about the Center for Educational Leadership's 5D rubric that results in common knowledge and common practice in the 5 major areas that is focused on. The important thing here is that the collaborative steering committee, which was teachers and administrators, made the selection, the rubric, and they will be meeting monthly, and we will be evaluating how we're doing on that, so that we end this coming year with everybody knowing it and really good movement towards doing it. Through the administrative meetings at the same time, we're going to work with the admin to build and protect time for principals to observe using the rubric. Kind of like with kids, if a kid is having to struggle to sound out every word, it's very difficult for that child to get to the end of the sentence and understand what the meaning of the sentence was, because they're fighting hard just to know the words. You have to see more and read quicker in order to build fluency. We want to really build fluency in our administrators in seeing the 5 practices. We want to build fluency with our teachers in doing those. And then we want to build skills to allow administrators to create feedback, which are questions that lead to teacher and administrative reflection. Goal number 2, facility planning process in partnership with the community and facility specialists, develop an overall process timeline to determine Greater Albany School District's facility maintenance needs, along with any possible new construction of schools or district-related sites. One of the reasons that we need to do this is beyond, so here's the central truth. We have a bunch of old buildings in this district, and they are under rain and sleet and hot sun every day, all the time. And they degrade, the roofs degrade, and we always have to know how we're doing across all of our facilities. We talked to the budget committee about the fact that in 2027, the 2007 construction bond, which built Timber Ridge, will retire. May or November 2027 elections are possible dates. There are many steps to take before we ever get there. We have to recruit a committee to begin to do the work that is representative of the community. We have to evaluate our current needs in our existing buildings. We have to project the population of this community and the number of students we're going to have. All of those represent things we need to know, and there's headwind in that. Next slide. So the last couple things that I really want everybody to understand. It is important to know that the facility planning is not a run to a bond automatically. It is identifying the condition of our facilities and whether they will meet the needs in the future. We did 3 facility planning years when I was in the North Santiam School District. We went out for 1 bond. There were 2 that the final recommendations were not to go, and for us to look at different ways that we could do some of the work. The final written goal for this will be presented in September for board adoption. So that is kind of a 3-year timeline, and I'm going to turn 1 year into a goal that we will accomplish within that year as we move forward, right? So that we'll come to that in August or September. Third goal, just enhance work and learning partnerships with community, business, and industry. In partnership with community organizations, businesses, and educational networks, GAPS will increase specific job-related opportunities for high school students, possible partners of the Chamber, Lynn Benton Lincoln ESD, LBCC. We also have a STEM hub here present. There is a backbone of work that is done annually, and Janet Steele from the Chamber has already asked to meet with me about the community job fair for high school kids, those kind of things. And so we know that Bruce has a strength in this area as well. Bruce Schmidt, our new assistant superintendent. And so probably the only thing I didn't put up there is just area businesses that we will look to partnership with directly. those are the three that I'm proposing. Love to hear you guys over the next couple months, ask questions about what those look like. And I know some of you have some ideas, particularly about this one. And I think that's it.
A question about the first goal.
Yeah.
I know we haven't really talked about what building presentations look like next year. Maybe we can tweak that, but it'd be nice to work that first goal into those presentations so we can kind of get a sense as to the level of fluency and how those principals are implementing that instructional rubric as part of their presentation.
Yeah. So one of the things we talked the other day with the teachers about on the planning is how, so for example, the bias incident response, right? Comfort of administrators as they change their behavior is really important to this as well, right? And so I project that we have even building secretaries that we need to make sure they understand that and provide them with answers about how we protect principal time. There's several different methodologies, but we want to make sure that principals are learning their role in the system as much as teachers are, right? How they are graded.
Yeah, I mean, one of my biggest, I'm happy with the way we did the budgets. Don't hear this as a criticism, but one of the things when we let principals choose which TOSAs to keep and what areas to keep, I got concerned because a principal that chooses to keep an instructional TOSA and let a behavior TOSA go because they feel they have behavioral strength, then spends all their time doing behavior, they're the only one in the building that can supervise instruction, right? So there are things like that that just sort of, we need to make sure we all understand that principals have to be the instructional leaders. They can't punt that to a TOSA, right?
Yeah, and it's learning. It's going to be learning all around. Yeah. So we have the standard issue. So I think our principals give a lot of feedback across. They might give a QTEL or an AVID or their own, assessment of a classroom. But just the idea that we're going to start really working towards there's a 4-block. 3 is the standard. Like, how do we get people to be a 3 across, these different categories? And so I'm looking forward to that. Generally, when people practice, I think Kelsey would say the same thing. The principals who dug in and really have bought in and operate the bias incident have gotten better and better through the year. And so there's going to be a growth. Thank you.
I think now we move on to middle school grading.
Well, at this time, and I'll give Susie a chance to introduce. I did not make the last meeting as I was in Eastern Oregon, but super proud of my own experience at one of the meetings. The last meeting was chaired by Dave and Susie, and do you guys want to introduce them?
They're going to introduce themselves,
Okay.
but they did an amazing job, and you're going to hear all about it.
Hi, hello. So the secondary grading committee was a group of,
Who are you? Are you going to wait?
we got a plan. We got
Okay.
a plan.
Awesome.
We talked about it. We got a plan. The entire secondary grading committee was about 30-ish people total, with representatives from every middle school and high school in the district. So reaching really far, trying to get all sorts of perspective. Like it says, all 4 middle schools, West Albany High School and South Albany High School, were represented. We are the 4 from the committee who are sharing our recommendations with you all tonight. My name is Caitlin Sawyer. I'm the freshman success counselor at South Albany High School.
And I'm Katie Kelly. I teach 8th grade science at North Albany Middle School.
I'm Jen Winchell. I teach social studies at West Albany High School.
And my name is Kayla Adair. I teach math, and I'm the MTSS coordinator at Memorial Middle School.
So this committee was pulled together with the initial charge of addressing the middle school grading system to create more urgency around that 50% grading standard, with the bottom line being 50%, whether that's effort or missing. Looking at changes, if any, to the high school grading policies, really trying to hone in on that transition from 8th grade to 9th grade, as we know that is a really big year for our students. And then making sure we include the procedures of communication with families so they know about changes and anything else involved in this.
Okay, so things have changed a lot in the past million years, and I've think I've been here for all of them. But a while ago, we changed to a standards-based grading program. So we did a 1 through 4 with 3 being kind of a meet and 4 being an exceeds for a period of time. There were really good pluses and minuses to this entire thing, but the downfall of it proved to be communication with the parents who sort of never really got on board with the 1 through 4 and really needed to go back to the A through F. So that was 2015 to 2019. 2019 to 2022, we went into standards referenced grading, which means we all have state standards and we make sure that we're teaching to them. Middle school teachers added standards to their assignment, but returned to grading A through F. The 50% on there was instituted to make it not mathematically impossible to find your way out of a failing grade. If you've read the book, The Case Against the Zero, and you're mathematically inclined, then you know that mathematically it makes pretty good sense. Theoretically, it turned out to be a little more challenging, and we'll talk about that in the next slide. COVID grading, per the state of Oregon, missing assignments were to be accepted through the end of the term/year. So that's where we've been. Okay, so why the change now? Our students are struggling between 8th and 9th grade. The 50% goes away from 8th to 9th grade, and the kids sort of bottom out. I don't see the high schools changing to a 50%, nor actually should they. So getting rid of that 50% and giving those middle school kids more of a feeling of what their grades really are before they transition to 9th grade turned out to be important. And that was sort of like a pretty easy one. Parents were really struggling. Again, it's hard to tell with a quick look at the grade book, and especially for those people using it on a mobile device, to go back to the mobile devices, a 50% shows I didn't do the assignment, and a 50% shows I did the assignment, but I actually really didn't do well on the assignment, and instead of getting like a 30%, it got bumped to the 50%. If you are a parent or you have conversations with students, then you know that like you didn't do the assignment is a much different conversation than, hey, you really struggled on that assignment. Okay, so so we weren't doing the parents any favors with that one. And then the other thing that we wanted to change now is that we had middle schools across the board have been on an 80-20 weighted category. So 80% were summative, like tests and academic work, and then 20% have been what we call the practice or the effort. And in 9th grade, when the kids went to the high school, it was sort of all over the place. 60-40 in some classes, 70-30, 80-20, 60-20-20. We knew that they were struggling with that, so we wanted to make that change easier on them as well.
So our recommendations are first, to remove the 50% for missing work at the middle school level. Students should earn the grade that they have received, and missing assignments are 0%. We also recommend all levels using a 70-30 weighted category, 70% being that summative, academic, the tests, 30% being formative, the effort, the practice. We also recommend some exceptions to this, especially for College Now classes, AP, CTE, and World Language classes at the high school level. For late work cutoffs, we recommend middle schools have a hard stop for accepting late work at the 9 weeks, and a hard stop cutoff for the high school at semesters. For further late work policies, we recommend building level discretion, and specifically charging each building to set those policies, keeping in mind consistency for the grade level at middle school and departments at high school. We would like to charge the buildings to set these policies in August and report back on them before students enter buildings in the fall. Our final recommendation is that grades will be updated every 5 student contact days. This translates to about once a week at the middle school level and about once every 2 weeks at the high school level.
And this is just a summary of why. So our proposed revised grading policy with a 0 for missing assignments, category weighting changing to that 70-30 as opposed to 80-20, and clear deadline for late work with teacher discretion. Although that wasn't stated, when the building levels establish their late policies, we're hoping that teachers have a voice in that during that process, and so that's where the teacher discretion comes through. Like, okay, we have these hard 9-week deadlines. However, we're going to come up together collaboratively, which is going to create buy-in. What our late work policies are for our grade level teams at the middle school level. And then, of course, if a student is experiencing extreme circumstances, like, God forbid, a death in the family or something, like, we'll always have that discretion to make exceptions for those students. Where was I? So we're hoping that this fosters a strong work ethic, because right now they get 50% for doing nothing. And I've been there for 10 years, and I work with 6th grade, so 6th grade is this really, really important special time. And we want to celebrate their effort. We want to give them credit for trying. We don't want to give them credit for doing nothing. We don't want to reinforce that behavior. We want to celebrate their effort. It's worth more now than it was before. However, they're going to feel it if they're not doing something. So we're reinforcing that behavior of doing work, turning it in, getting feedback, doing better. Again, allows teacher flexibility to address individual student needs. This approach promotes a more holistic evaluation of student progress, provides clear communication to students and parents, so there's no more confusion of if an assignment is missing or just done poorly, and is consistent across our schools to support a positive learning environment. That's it. Questions?
Roger, go ahead.
So it would seem that at the 6th grade level, you're now going to have more work because up until the 5th grade, well, tell me, what's the grading policy for a 5th grader?
I do not teach 5th grade. However, I believe that 5th graders receive feedback for everything that they do. And it's a 1 through 4? Question mark? Are there any elementary school teachers here?
It's in the policy. I believe it's E's and M's and S.
Roger, it's standards based.
Yeah, so
Okay,
so
all
for
right,
example,
okay.
if they're trying to multiply numbers, right? And they are like just adding 1 plus 4 instead of doing one group of 4 for 1 times 4, that would be a 1. They don't get it. But if sometimes they get multiplication problems correct, that's a 2. If mostly they get multiplication problems correct, that's a 3. A 4 would be like they're exceeding the standard. They're applying it to algebra, right? They're conceptualizing it further than what is expected for their grade level.
So it's a completely different grading system. And so,
Yes.
so they're being introduced in the 6th grade to a new grading system.
Yes.
Before and now. So maybe I shouldn't assume it will be more work for you. Will it be more work for you?
No, sir.
In the
I
6th
think
no,
that
okay.
it will be, first and foremost, I think it will be better for families because parents will no longer be confused about what they're looking at when they're trying to support their students at home, right? There will be no more confusion about what is missing versus what did they just do poorly on and need help with. Because before, it was very confusing for families to figure that out because mathematically they were 50%. But now I'm going to say 0 if they didn't do it, which is the same as doing 50 if they didn't do it, and then mark accurately what their scores were.
Okay, just great. Thank all of you for your work and the presentation.
Great work. Do you have a sense as to how supported your colleagues are going to be? Most teachers going to be on board with this, you think? Good. Yeah, I think so too. And then the only kind of other thing I'd throw out there, and you mentioned it, is the case against 0. Zeros are a problem. I came from a school before this where we had a zeros aren't permitted policy where, we had a system in place for kids with zeros to make sure. And so I know it's very difficult to do, but I hope the schools look at ways to not just say 0 is a 0 and go, because that can be extremely difficult.
Yes, and that's where our late policy, like at the building level, is going to be so powerful because we're going to still encourage students to turn in those assignments even if they're not on time. And I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I know that our school is gonna give them a time frame where it will still be worth 100%, and then afterwards we'll talk about a decrease, like percentage of their progress. But but still they're getting credit for doing work that they actually did.
Yeah, good. I like it.
No, I thought the last couple meetings went really well and were efficient and we were getting to where we need to be. It was very invigorating, so I know at first it was a little frustrating for many of us, but I think we got to the spot and I think everyone's happy. And that's the most important thing. I think the most important thing is this is good for our students and this is good for our staff. So it's a win-win. Thank you.
I just want to start off by saying thanks to the teachers and the administrators that were all present. I know I didn't make every single one of them, but I did my best to make the most. But just having, especially over the last couple meetings, hearing the feedback, having all the interactive conversations with everyone was extremely helpful from my perspective. And I just appreciate the work that you guys did on that. In terms of the policy and the recommendation, I think this is a fantastic step towards getting that communication better to parents about how their student is doing in the classroom. I think that's a fantastic step and goal for that. I really think the last couple meetings, being able to hear that be interactive with all the different groups and hear all of that was fantastic. So thank you all.
Before you run off, I want to thank you for all your hard work. This has been a 3-year conversation that Pete started. And it's been his focus since before he was a board member. That's something that's very important to him. And so I'm really happy that you came to this position. I only have one possible concern, it's probably because of my lack of knowledge, but the building level discretion. One of my concerns is that we get misaligned and that you have middle schools that are all doing different things. And when they go to high schools, they don't always go directly from, some of the middle schools can go to one high school or the other. And so I'm hoping there's an eye towards consistency. So when they go to the high schools, there's an easy transition, because I know that's been a tough spot, going from 8th grade or 8th grade to 9th grade. Yeah, get my grades right here. Has been challenging for students, and we're losing almost half the year trying to get them up to speed. So just keeping an eye on that. I don't want to tell you how to do your business, but just that's a concern that I had, is making sure that it's consistent and the students can follow along and have success as they graduate up a level. So that was all I had.
Yeah, I don't really feel like there's that was more just like a concern sharing. And I would say that the committee as a whole also felt that concern. And when we started to process more of a specific late work policy, we came to a consensus that us in the room could not set up something like that without the input of our teaching staff in all of the buildings. And although that we had representation from all of the buildings, it didn't feel like enough to then really hone in on these specific late work policies, which is why we shared the charges of the schools coming together and as those department teams, as those grade level teams, keeping that consistency in mind and trying to create those collaboratively, hearing and echoing those same concerns as well.
Marvelous.
And then some of our firm recommendations of the 70-30 at all grade levels, we're also echoing and supporting that concern of trying to keep some things consistent in as many ways as we can.
Good. And Andy, could I ask that we have these nice ladies back a year from now and get a follow-up on?
I've got a couple questions.
Okay,
for them.
good.
So, committee members, thank you for your work. I really enjoyed the meeting, and I was really sorry that I couldn't make the last one. But I really liked just how engaged and you were ready to go. So, one question I have is, do you see that this committee will be convened again? You were talking about like early September or August?
So we just that we're charging the schools during that in-service time to work together at the beginning of the year, that one of their goals is to set those late work policies, and that they will report back, whether that's to you or someone else, on what each building or grade level or department policy is, to show accountability that those policies were set and are going to be consistent throughout the year.
Okay, so my preference will be that you guys will come together a couple times as we iron that out and begin to groove that. I think it's, you guys are doing the work, I'm not. And so just that you guys are being a part of that. So I have one more question. So the original charge was also, if any, high school recommendations. You've made one. how much does that depart from the current practice in high schools? Because on one of the slides, you said that there's some variance there, or perhaps a lot of variance.
Happy medium. If you looked at the high schools, mostly by department, but sometimes not. There was a bunch of high school classes that did 80-20 and a bunch of other classes that did 60-40 and then a whole bunch that did 70-30.
Okay.
So basically what we said is, unless you're one of this sort of special crew that's dictated by a different level, we're going to ask that you're all the same because no ninth grader should have to go to 8 different classes with 8 different grading weights.
Fair enough.
Right? Understanding that AP and College Now and all those other things, had different rules.
I appreciate the fact that you guys delved into that and really, tried to reach some kind of a consensus place. So thank you.
One more. Roger has a question.
So how widely is this recommendation accepted by your peers?
I went back after the final meeting to the 7th and 8th grade lunch at my school and said, I had a sticky note that I had taken a picture of and said, hey, here's what we decided. And everybody looked at it and went, yep, that looks awesome. And we went on our day. I think that this is I think no one's going to, this will be widely accepted. I feel extraordinarily confident.
So would it be safe to say that at this time there's no known opposition to putting this plan forward?
I don't think so. I think that the grading group came from every single school, so everybody was represented, right? And we had all different types of people, right? Math intervention, science, counselor, language arts, everything. I would think the grading group did a really good job.
Thank you.
And I misspoke. There's one more, then I'm going to cut it off. Go ahead.
Mine was not necessarily for y'all, but thank you. Mine was more for the superintendent. Could this be something when we do have the policies, that when we have our school proposals starting next year, or not proposals, presentations, that
could just talk about this.
they bring what they're implementing, and then also how it's going, depending on where in the year they're at.
Yeah.
Just so that'll be a checkup point for all of us with whatever that administrator is in the schedule.
So that would be at the middle and high school levels?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Happy to do it. I think one of the great rules is the person who does the work is the only person who does the learning. And so you'll note that in the original charge, it was to create urgency, right? So the kids were more likely to do that. I will say this, though. I think that we will see a rolling challenge here as we have kids who have not turned in work, how the school will intervene, because it's not necessarily going to happen by magic. It's going to take work. The old Dufour work said this is one of the main things that schools have to do is when kids don't do their work, that you have to create places and ways that they are enforced to get their work. And we know that there's some of this that's already happening through the Abbott at South, those kind of things. So, but there'll be a challenge here because there's going to be a bunch of people that will come back and say, we got a bunch of kids with Fs. We need to hold them all back, right? That's like down the road, and we need to make sure that we're thinking as well, which is a great reason for this committee. How will we support and not just enforce or hand out Fs, right? So that will be the challenge.
I have a process question.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, and Superintendent, what do you need at this point? Is this, you're acting on this and going forward? Do you need a motion from the board? What do we need to
Can we
do?
let the lady sit down?
They are recommendations to you, right? So
Sure.
that's what, do you guys understand that to be the case? You're coming here for recommendations to move forward. You could endorse.
As far as I understand, you have it written in an AR that's going to be
Yeah.
followed
And
later.
later in the agenda, I'm pretty sure the AR is there, right?
Okay, great. Yeah, we just want to make sure we got it. I guess you guys can hurry up and sit down before they ask you another
Yeah.
question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Really well
guys.
done.
Nice work. Thank you guys so much.
Hey, gentlemen, we're on to board member reports. Who wants to go first? Ryan, you want to go first?
I mean, I don't really have anything. I'm sorry I missed the last meeting and I wasn't able to listen to it either, guys. I don't know what was going on, but there's a lot of quiet scurrying around on my screen, and then I eventually gave up. So it was a good meeting, and I'm sorry that I wasn't there. But I don't have any other reports.
Ryan.
Although I would say the graduations were great. I know you guys said that last time, and I echoed what you said. So
You want to go next? Yes.
Sure. We have agenda items later to approve budget and those kinds of things. I just want to note for the record again, and I did it a bit at the end of the budget committee meeting, but the funding is set by the Oregon legislature, and as it flows through to K through 12 around the state, was short. I don't think that's news to anybody, but at the 10.3 billion level, it assumed COLAs of 3%. And with inflation, it's not a good number. And at the same time, I would point out that the calculation to fund state agencies and other things assumed COLAs for state employees of 6% for 2 years. And so we really are short what we need to make a stronger attempt at catching compensation up with the inflation we've seen over the last 3 years. And at the same time, all of that has happened. The School Stabilization Fund gained hundreds of millions of dollars that if not for action coming up by the Oregon legislature, will sit in that fund. And it just it's not right that at a time where we need stabilization, we didn't get the resources we needed while they're building funds for some future day. So there are three ways that you can get to those school stabilization funds, and one of those three is a special session by the legislature. I don't pretend to to hold any sway in that regard, but it's worth noting, and I hope going forward that it gets corrected. And I would also say that none of this today is the fault of the Oregon legislature, because the K through 12 lobby in general, as I understand it, signed off on the 10.3, and they just shouldn't have. And so we are where we are, and we will do the best we can.
I've got nothing today.
No announcement?
No.
All right.
I'll announce for him. Congratulations to Sean and his wife, Ezekiel. They had a child Tuesday night, so that's pretty exciting. He's brand new to fatherhood, and all of us that have parents knows what that means. So it's quite a joy and quite a bit of work. So congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm just thank you that we actually making some movement on middle school grades. I think that'll be really important. I think that'll pay off for our kids. I think that'll pay off for our staff. I think it's a win-win. I'm really happy that we're doing it. I know we'll be talking about this, but I want us to, talk about, attendance seems to be still a huge issue with us and everybody else, Oregon especially more than other people. We need to keep the push on that, because obviously if the kids aren't in class or they're in class on their cell phone, their learning's probably not that great, right? So we need to work on both those. That's all I got.
I also want to congratulate the middle school grading team for getting that on board and ready for next year. That's going to be huge, I think. I look forward to getting some feedback on that. Cell phones, I think, are another area where we're going to need to do some work and try to find some methodology for keeping them out of the class during classroom instruction. And other than that, that's all I have. We don't have any student member board reports, so now we have a consent agenda item, personnel licensed. Looking for a motion or discussion.
I'll move to approve the personnel licensed.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next is personnel classified.
I'll move to approve personnel classified as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Regular board meetings from June 10th, 2024. Looking to approve those. Need a motion?
I'll move to approve minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on to old business, board policy deletions.
So you will recall that we talked our way through these at the last meeting. These are related to a requirement that the district now has to have all of these policies in a handbook. And so if you will take a look at the very first one, develop a written prevention-oriented health services plan for all students. And of course, that plan then has taken some policies that are no longer separately necessary. This is one, though, that would be, and I think the motion is to approve policy deletions, and so these would be just pro forma deletions. We recommend you do so.
I'll move to approve policy deletions as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
So am I to understand that that motion incorporated or encapsulated JHC, JHCC, JHCCA?
As well as EBBA.
So that was the intent of the vote.
That was the intent of the vote, yes. That's what we did.
Congratulate you on your efficiency. Thank you. So in reports, I was gone here for the last week. We have not finalized a middle school program activities update. One of the things that we have is we had $200,000 was devoted to this, and we know that Mr. Bolin has used some of that to just enhance the facilities that we do on them. But we do not yet have it all parsed out so that we can present to you. But we would probably not be looking to add in this current environment, funding-wise, this year. So spoke with Pete, and we will continue to move forward on that. We'll share that out. We are in regular monthly contact with the YMCA, as well as Albany Boys and Girls Club. And we have spent a little bit of time talking about the footprint of those organizations and what sports they provide and what might be possible here as we go forward.
So is the reason we don't have organized sports competitions against neighboring districts financial? Like, because they have Lebanon and Corvallis, those guys have leagues for middle schools, and we don't play in those because we can't afford to, is that right?
Well, right now, so
With the 200 grand, we can't, isn't enough money to pay to play in those leagues.
so I would love to see a detailed report and see what's left there. I know that we had funds that were used to improve the facilities. So when that's improved, I don't know if there's more work to be done, but that's something that we could be open to in a way this fall even, if there is room there
Okay.
with existing sports.
Yeah,
Bringing
I
on
mean,
another sport or
Right.
two.
It seems like some of those sports, especially where the leagues exist, and I know they'd love to have us join them, there can't be a ton of cost involved in that. I wouldn't
Like a
think.
trip to Chelderland for track and field.
Exactly.
Yeah, got it. So we'll first just get that figured out, what we have and what we are currently annually expending. Dave, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, we logged in the first 3 quarters, we actually logged about $288,000 of expenditures in that area. Jane and I are in the process right now, just verifying those are all accurate moving forward for budget this next coming year, but that's what we reported out at this point, so.
288K in middle school activities.
Yes, sir.
Meaning activities occurring outside the school day.
Yep.
Does
To know what that is.
But does that also include some facility upgrades?
I don't believe so,
Okay.
but we can bring that back and.
Yeah, I want
wanna
to see
br-
what
I
that
wanna-
was, because the year before, we had a bunch of, like, we redid the track in North Albany,
Okay.
those kind of things, so.
Yeah.
Like to know.
I know that the high school athletic directors have worked with the area athletic directors, and they've put a plan together for the future that they'd really like to see happen.
So, just,
Go ahead.
I'm a bit, so did the money go all the facilities, or did some of the money go to put on a track meet? It sounds like that these funds did not go directly to,
The large majority of it is salary of coaches and things of that nature, I think is a larger chunk of it. I don't think we had any facilities upgrades in that this year.
That's my point. If we're paying coaches, it doesn't cost us more to pay them to go compete against other schools than to compete intramural. There's no cost change there. Coaches pay as the coaches pay. So that's why I don't understand why we're not playing interscholastically.
So it isn't just coaches either. We have, I think, 5 clubs at each of our middle school, and so the stipends went to the the club advisors and supported the clubs as well as the athletics.
It's activities like robotics,
Yeah, sure.
other things.
But you're just quick 50K coaches. I don't know what those stipends are, 5.
So do we
Okay,
want to
so
see
you
a
got 10
breakdown?
per
Is that what
school.
we're kind of
I
asking
mean,
for?
I'm curious.
Yeah.
And we can do that.
I know the money could disappear quickly spread across the 4 schools,
Yeah.
but I'd just be curious how it's getting spent.
Yeah, so it would be good to see what the end result that got to kids and them running around the track or on the ball field or whatever.
And then again, what barriers still exist to increasing the level of competition outside of our district boundary?
So if we pull that together, we'll send it to you.
Okay.
Because I think that would be better than waiting for the next meeting.
Okay.
Point of process, I think we skipped
We
J2.
jumped J2. Yeah, I was just getting ready to go there. Thank you for that. Yeah. We did, we got a little excited. So we have to go back to J2 board policy. There are some policy updates shown there. There's EBBA. I don't know, Andy, if you want to go through this. or-
EBBA represents the plan that all the policies you've deleted are now rolled into. So that one is not a delete.
Right, these are additions.
I got an E, a B, is this a sign that maybe we have too many board policies?
Well, you just spent a few minutes
I gotta
getting
have
rid
a
of
board
some.
policy to delete board policies. Okay,
At least we got rid of some.
Stand on what you just did. You've deleted several.
okay, all right.
There's a small victory there. So we're looking for a motion here.
So we're deleting EBBA and adopting EBBA, meaning we're just replacing it. But we did just delete and add
It's
separate.
completely rewritten, so that's why they have put it through as a deletion, because it was
Gotcha.
about first aid, now it's about the health services.
I see. Okay.
So it's completely content changed.
Then I move that we adopt EBBA.
Well, it's more than just that. There's several. So there's also JHCA-JHCB, which is immunization. So we want to make sure we include all of the policies that need updated.
So moved. All policies that need updated that are listed here.
All right. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, now we can move to Ms. Jane's financial update on K3. No, wait, sorry, Kelsey, I'm so sorry. I about bypassed you, about did it again. It's your turn on bias incident reporting. Could you turn that screen so I could see it, that one down there? Thank you.
Patrons can see it then. I was thinking of that too.
Well, they can see the one behind us easier without having to turn.
There's that.
A little more. Perfect, thank you. Does that work for you? You see it?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay.
this one too.
I just don't want to turn my back on everybody, so.
Hi, all.
Hi.
So this is kind of a overview of the process of creation and of the protocol this year, and then some of the more meat and potatoes that you have had questions about throughout the year. So please know also that next year I'll be working with John Dilbone to have a easy poll process so that we can have current numbers much easier than me having to print them all out and go through each one, because each time we pull them, it's like all year. So next year it'll be much more concise. So this year I created the internal protocol just in terms of addressing it. I wanted to discuss with you a little bit more, and for the public, the purpose behind that, right? We just really needed a system in place that allowed for administrators and teachers to have a process that they understood. And folks are still, it's first year, people are getting more comfortable with it. And ultimately, the goal is to allow for students to also have a system in place that offers them some protection if they're experiencing harm, as well as students who are causing harm to have a process in which we know what that pattern looks like and that they're held accountable in a progressive way, right? So our reasons for tracking, I spoke to this a little bit, but understanding patterns. Particularly, it was important for me to make sure that administrators knew that tracking numbers wasn't an opportunity for me to say, gotcha. It's more of a, hey, what patterns are showing up for you and what trainings can I offer you and your teachers? What supports can I offer your students and families based on what you're experiencing? And so for that reason, having accurate information allows me to know what I can do to support those spaces. And then additionally, it helps me to develop interventions to support students who might be struggling with understanding how they're causing harm. And then with that, the accountability measure of students who have consistently caused harm. What does that look like across your year or even across your experience at GAPS, which I'll speak to a little bit more when we look at what we're doing next year in addition to what we've done this year. And as I said before, supporting marginalized students. So historically, there wasn't a strong system that everyone was adhering to. And so kiddos who are experiencing harm didn't have some type of process of reporting that felt trusted. And what I've heard this year from students is that they feel like the adults are leaning into this, that they're appreciative of this process, and that they themselves understand how to report on their own behalf and advocate for their peers as well in school spaces. And so to speak to the progressive discipline piece, this, as well as offering opportunity for growth, we want it to be consistent across the board, right? And so if you have one kiddo who's experiencing harm in one space, but maybe they're one of 5 Black children in one space and they're experiencing harm over and over and over, something that has come up is that how are we tracking what harm they're experiencing? So if we have one kiddo and they're the brunt of like 15 situations, that can feel really overwhelming for that particular family, especially if they have multiple kids in our school spaces across the district. And so something that y'all had asked was, what does that look like? And we have a levels system. So by the first time this happens, there's a tracking mechanism. It's in our synergy system. And then there's a restorative conversation. There's sometimes educational pieces like watching a video, having a conversation with parents on both sides, with students, understanding why that behavior isn't accepted, if it's at a certain level. If it goes to a second level, there's like in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension, just depending on that. And then third level, the severity increases. And essentially, if a kiddo has an opportunity to understand how they've caused harm throughout any of those levels, if that continues, then it just gets ramped up, essentially. We don't want it to be just a one and done. We want to offer students the opportunity to understand how they're causing harm, but we also don't want to just allow them to continue to cause harm and not have that progressive discipline follow. Additionally, we're a learning space, so we want students to understand, not just be pushed out of that space, particularly because if they're sent home and not offered opportunities to understand that behavior, when they come back, it just continues. So I spoke to this a little bit just a minute ago of the cumulative impact. I had a request for a diagram. So these are some examples of some of the things that some of our students do experience. These are comments and words that have been reported to myself and Ethan this year. And these aren't even some of the more severe ones, but we've had multiple kiddos in our school system across the years who experience harm. And even if every single student who says those comments, right, if they learned that their comment impacted student in the center, it doesn't take away from that student's harm, right? So even if kids are experiencing understanding and growth, okay, I can't say this word, I can't make this comment. Again, if you're one of 5 students who is experiencing the brunt, what are we doing to support that student? And so I wanted to speak to that a little bit We've really worked on safety plans this year, and the ways in which we're supporting students. That can look like changing that student's schedule. It can look like implementing a no contact order, identifying a safe adult on campus or multiple adults for that student to check in regularly, as well as administrators checking in with that student and family. And then continuation across gaps. So we're tracking bias incidents across all schools. So if a student, goes through our school system, comes from elementary to middle to high, our goal is that we're understanding who has caused harm historically and potentially shouldn't be in space again as they leave one school setting to another. So when we do transition plans, that this bias information would be a part of that, similar to behavior. For example, if Dave and I don't get along and have continued to have conflict, that maybe next year we don't sit next to each other, or that we're not placed in similar school spaces, and that is something that administrators communicate around. It offers an extra level of support as they transition to schools. I feel like I'm talking at you so much. There will be questions soon, I'm sure. So with all of that in mind, next year, an added level of support is that we're going to be pulling records. So essentially, if we're tracking it and it just goes into the abyss, it actually does us nothing, right? So if a kiddo has a bias incident, our recommendation would be that administrators pull their history throughout their tenure and gaps, so that we have an understanding of how many times have we had this conversation, what has the behavior looked like through middle school, elementary school, et cetera. Because as it stands currently, if a year ends, you're kind of wiped clean. But if there's not that tracking, an additional measure, then we're not protecting students who are experiencing harm. I know that can seem daunting for some, but ultimately our goal is that with education and opportunity for growth and strong supports for families and students, even the kids who are causing harm are learning and don't want to be continuing that harm. And then additionally, I learned this year that a lot of the tracking has looked different in each school. And so I hope to just continue to train staff on what it looks like to accurately track, as well as train more folks. Historically, it stayed mostly at the administrative level this year, but we get a lot of reports from teachers and SEAs and behavioral staff, et cetera, who are trusted adults for some of these kids, and then they feel like their hands are tied in terms of supporting. So I want to offer them more training and understanding of what that looks like and how they get the information either to me or to administrators. And with everything that's new, it takes time to learn. So just reestablishing this strong expectation and that folks lean into what the protocol looks like. And then that hopefully will ensure that these things are being tracked efficiently and that families are also being informed. And then my hope also would be that school level reports to families continue. We did a letter home this year just informing community of what's happening in each school space, and we got a lot of strong response from community. They felt that even if the numbers are a little shocking, that the transparency means a lot, and that the resources and the knowledge that schools care and are reporting on it meant something. Additionally, would love to just hear what schools are doing to support students and how they're effectively supporting the students who are experiencing bias. Additionally, I hope to I'm going to create videos this summer that will be played at the beginning of each class as students return to school, like homeroom or after spring break, Christmas break, just explaining our policy, why it exists, and how to report. We've also had a lot of requests for the QR codes to be in every classroom. Ethan and I did a lot of trainings this year with our AVID classes.
What are the QR codes?
Yeah, so our big posters that talk about bias protocol and see bias, report bias has a QR, so you can just put your cell phone straight up to it and it'll link a student directly to the reporting system that comes directly to me. Um,
The same cell phone, so
Yeah.
we'll work on that.
Yeah, okay, we'll figure that out. But it has been a really nice and anonymous way for students to do that. It's really quick, and a lot of our teachers have requested it because sometimes students don't want to go directly to an administrator. They want something a little bit more under the radar. So having it in a trusted classroom helps. And then I also will be providing some guidance on establishing and maintaining classroom norms and safety that I hope teachers will adopt at the beginning of a school year so that there's just this buy-in of what it looks like in that classroom space. And it makes it easier to reference when something happens in class space, which does happen. I think teachers also want training on how to interrupt. And then additionally, there's this misconception, I think, that once you've handled a situation in a classroom, that it's not needed to be brought to your administrator. So I will be helping teachers understand how to interrupt in class, as well as the next step after that. Just because we've interrupted it doesn't mean that it ends there. It needs to get to administration, and it needs to be tracked, and potentially kiddos need more conversation than what happened in that space. So that's just kind of an overview of what's happening in terms of the protocol, the reasons behind tracking, and some of the goals I have for next year to strengthen this process. And I would love to hear questions and
Oh, I
feedback.
think you will. Go ahead, Roger.
Thank you for your work and thank you for the presentation. Do we have plans to do work with classified employees?
Yes, so SEAs and other folks, behavior folks, anyone who is a trusted adult who is seeing this stuff, I would like them to understand how to report and how to interrupt.
So have we started that process already, or is that?
This first year it has been administrators, and so one of my goals for next year is to broaden that scope based on feedback I received.
That would include classified? Thank you.
Yes.
Classified don't have PD baked into their schedule, right? So do you have a plan for, or money for that?
Money plan, yes. I mean, we do present at school spaces when administrators want us to come in, and I think I can also do videos or additional walkthroughs, guides, etc. I'm also happy to come to meetings that happen on campuses and be like a 15-minute overview of things where folks are open to having me.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. I know you and
Ethan.
do say again?
Ethan.
Ethan. Okay, I blanked there. Ethan are doing a great job getting out into the buildings, and that's made a big deal. I've heard that from many teachers and administrators. I think, our bias incidents have gone up. I think it really hasn't been, they've gone up. We're just tracking them, and that's really important. And I also think it's important that we give our students a chance to learn, but then also learn that you don't get to learn over and over again. When you do the same thing over again, you get in trouble for it. So I think that's really important, and I think it's not perfect, right? And it's never going to be perfect, but I think we're moving in that direction, and I think most of the parents and staff see that and are positive, and that's all we can hope for. So thank you for the work.
Thank you.
Sean, anything? I had a couple questions, Kelsey. First of all, I'm so happy that you're tracking and, you had that idea and to follow through with the students and keep, to look at the patterns and to try to solve the problem in a longer term basis as opposed to playing almost whack-a-mole every year trying to put another handle on this. So thank you for doing that. I had a question on, are the students made aware of what their future consequences are when they start down this path? If they continue to do this, they're doing, here's where you're going to end up. Because I think to the parents and the students, they need to understand that this continued behavior is going to have some long-term consequences.
Yeah, I think that that's something that's internal in the protocol in terms of communication. And I'm more than happy to support administrators in drafting what that communication would look like. I think that should happen at the first instance of this type of behavior, right? Because pre-teaching expectations often has positive change for students who want to avoid the end result, right?
Yep. No, I think so. And last, I know we talked about this early on, and getting an accurate picture is more important than worried about the numbers.
Absolutely.
And so, we don't want to be afraid of the big numbers. They're going to tell us where we can spend our time and have the most effect, which is our goal. We all want that to happen. And so just, keep getting the data, keep being accurate, and then we can attack the problem. And so thank you so much for all you've done. Anybody else have anything?
And as Andy mentioned too, I think this year the folks who leaned in the most to Ethan and I, right, and owned, like, I'm uncomfortable, I'm intimidated by this, and called me near every day, are the ones who feel the most confident at the end of the year. And I'm hopeful that next year most administrators will have me on speed dial.
Okay,
I'll be there.
administrators, so make sure you call Kelsey and get comfortable with this.
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now we can have Ms. Jane talk to us about, where did it go? Financial update.
Thank you. Good evening. So for tonight, I had given you a chart that shows a picture of the last 5 years, the change in our ADMR compared to the change in our licensed FTE. And the average daily membership, the numbers came from ODE. It's the average daily membership of our students across the years that we are paid for or will receive funding for. And so between 22-23 and 23-24, in April and May, ODE started looking at the numbers, and I've talked to you about this. We received a negative adjustment for 22-23. We've not yet, we will receive next May a correction for 23-24 if ODE's projection turns out to be true. So I'll know those numbers after July, after we have our student counts and we're able to submit all that to ODE. So I will keep watching that because you can see a drop. It's 80 student drop between 22-23 and 23-24. So that 80 student drop would also apply to 24-25 because I base the budget including those 80 students. So that's the reason I decided to bring this to you tonight. And I wanted to show you the licensed FTE, the change and really impact from COVID. We received the ESSER dollars, we got SIA grant, Measure 98. The needs of students increased. We hired additional nurses. You've heard us talk about that through budget, all the additional FTE. And during that time, we added 3 TOSAs to every elementary school. Of course, this year we reduced 1 TOSA in every elementary school for budget cuts. So it's really a correction and aligning that we need to look at going forward. And I will keep you updated. We'll keep watching this. I've watched other districts, other business managers across the state this year. Many of them had to borrow funds to pay June. Like today I transferred $20 million to pay the next 3 payrolls. And so I'll be watching our cash flow. I don't want the district to be in a position where we have to borrow to meet our needs. And so having a bigger ending fund balance makes that easier, less risky. So all of the pieces, work together, the collection of grants, monitoring the funds, monitoring the ADM. And so that's why I chose to bring this to you today, because it's just on my mind and what I watch as I look at our funds as we near the end of the year.
Any questions? Go ahead, Pete.
More of a statement just to make sure I have it right, and it was a little shocking to me. So, I mean, if you go at the 2019 to 20 to 2023, 24 this year, over that time span, we've lost 520 students.
460.
Okay, so the graphing is messed up, or I'm reading it wrong, or what? But all good. So 460. Okay, and we've grown like 70 teachers.
Total is 123. And remember, FTE is always a picture in time.
Sure.
And I took these numbers from the budgeting system.
Okay.
And so it is that picture in time when they developed the budget across the years, what it showed as licensed FTE.
So remember also, this distorts a little bit, right? Because it isn't 0 to 9,400, which would show, a
Sure.
decline. It's
No,
looks
it's
like
apples
we
to
lost half our kids, but yeah.
No, well, I'm more comparing the student numbers to the staffing numbers.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have definitely decreased hundreds and increased 70 licensed. And when you say licensed, that's teachers and nurses, and it's no certified? It's just
It's all
admin and teaching?
certified.
It's what?
This is just all
All
certified.
certified, okay. Okay, it's just that kind of, I was surprised by that number.
Yes.
So the change from 540 to 585 or whatever that number is, does that coincide with the CAT tax and an increase in fundings, which came with them, and an increase in requirements of the district?
Yes.
So from that,
That's a component of it, of course, Roger.
so from that perspective, it kind of syncs up. Yeah? I mean, and so, and I guess when I look at this, there's no other way to say this. We are competing for students with other public school districts, with private school districts, and as these, I at least don't know what's behind the numbers and what's behind the decline. Is there fewer kids here? I mean, if this were a business, and it, certainly education is not, but we would be, we would want to know why, and we would be doing things to correct that based on why our numbers are down, unless it's just population-based and there's nothing we can do about it. And in fairness, having said that, I think the decline in other districts are significantly greater than ours. Based on the numbers I've seen, we're better than average in that regard, but I think we have to ask ourselves, what, if anything, should we be doing different to better compete, to make this the most attractive place possible for folks, for young families evaluating where to send their kids. And I say that knowing that the last, during COVID, coming out of COVID, has been absolutely crazy, and generally people have been all in 100% to do the best we can here. But Superintendent Gardner, you have thoughts on that? Maybe you don't tonight, but.
Well, I think the most of the state has experienced a loss in enrollment. And a lot of that did occur. You'll recall that March of 2020 was when we pulled back due to COVID coming to America. I think that there has been a lot of thought about, there was probably even an assumption, even, in the old district that I was at, that the kids would come back once COVID abated. And that has not been true. We have remained down in enrollment since that time. There has been a little attrition, but a lot of it is at the incoming grades. Our grade cohorts are still roughly the same size at the high school and upper middle school. And I think there's probably a little less concern from parents. Their kids said, hey, I want to go to school. They'll let them go to school. Elementary parents tend to be a little more protective. And so we have had a slight decline in our incoming and I can share that with you, the population forecast that Mr. Saxton did. We have what's called a capture rate. We know how many kids are born that are in this district. And then 6 years later, they should be first graders. If we have a capture rate of about, I think it was 92% of all those kids that are born who start public school, we are far short of that over the last 2 or 3 years. It is not what it used to be.
This has been interesting to me, so I've looked into it a little bit. It's a little bit of everything. You know, it's the kid who went to homeschool, or not homeschool, but online school during COVID and decided they liked it and stayed there. It's, you know, the Albany Christians and the Santiam Christians are growing. You know, the private are growing. You know, it's more parents are homeschooling. You know, it's all the above. And we don't have as many bursts as we did at one point. So all those things are affecting. And unfortunately, like you said, it's a competitive market.
So what can we do differently?
What we're trying to do, why we're here.
I mean, clearly adding staff isn't doing it, right? I mean, we got a better staff to student ratio and no measurable increase in achievement or kids coming back. I mean, throwing staff at the problem hasn't helped, clearly, right? So I don't know how long we continue to let COVID be the excuse for that, but it's a little bit frustrating.
It like Roger said, in business, this would be the marketplace is telling you something,
Right.
right? Your product or your service is not as valuable as it once was. And so that's a thought process we're gonna have to go through and see how we can value add our services to the community so they want to be here.
And you might get 10 answers.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's
So-
real easy to state in very broad, generic terms, but the devil's in the details. And how to make that happen is going to be a challenge.
I think the other thing, so there are many different perceptions about the schools, right? And so, I invited you guys to come to schools because I think day to day, the reality of our schools is very different than some of the media portrayals of what goes on in schools. We need to constantly build that message as well. I think word of mouth is always really powerful. There's a lot of ways that people develop their word of mouth now, right? Where their kids go to school, they often trust their neighbors, those kind of things. There is a media influence there as well, depending on which media you're a part of. And so we just have there's headwind around this. We need to keep making every school as good as it can be, and it's just a great place where kids can experience good things.
And for me, the reason I brought it, it's to make sure I'm monitoring it so that we're not surprised. Because I don't want to end up with a zero ending fund balance or a negative ending fund balance. And next year, if 23-24 turns out like ODE projected, that's an 80 student drop, that's $1 million drop below our budget. So that's really the reason that I brought this to you, because it will be something I'll keep you informed on and something we're watching.
Eric Aguinaga last year, and I think you might have also mentioned it. He had asked a question at a board meeting that made me curious, and I started looking at that. And he said something like, "Why is it that we have 200 more staff members?" And he had quoted a Russ Allen budget from 2019 that said 9,500 kids. Why do we have one so increased and the other so low? How's that working? How is that helping, right? And so.
To be fair, the requirements have changed.
Yes.
So I guess I'm just, do we know the families and we know the kids in the district who have chosen not to come here? We must have that information. Is that without prying on it, bumping up against any privacy issues or anything? It's like, look, for me, my instinct is to want to call those families, have a conversation with the parents, and figure out what's motivating their choices and whether or not we can do anything about that to have them make different choices. And maybe we can't. Maybe though that segment of the community is just looking for something else, that we can't be all things to all people. But intuitively, it's hard to just look at this trend and these numbers and just say, oh, well. And so I would be interested in what other districts are doing in the way of research around numbers like this. I will keep thinking about it, and if any of us in the system solve that data gathering component that would make us all better, that would move this trend the other way, we should do that.
Can you stand a comment from the public on this?
Sorry, sir, no. But we'd love to read your letter. Let's see now. Any other discussion on the budget, or excuse me, the business financial update?
Just on a positive note, I did learn today that so far only 10 classified have submitted a request for unemployment. So that was another budget concern that I had shared with you. So that was really good news to see.
And can we get an update in August at our meeting, how that's gone for the summer?
Yes.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, moving on. If there's no other discussion, we're going to move on to the budget resolution. Jane, did you want to present that at all or talk about it, or?
It hasn't changed, since it was approved by the budget committee.
So we're seeking a motion, gentlemen.
All right, I move to approve the budget resolution for 24-25 as presented.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on to M2, the 2024-25 GASB fund balance.
So this is an audit requirement that we specify the types of funds which are restricted or non-restricted, like general fund is non-restricted. The 200 funds is restricted because it's the nature of the grants. Each grant comes with requirements of how it can be expended. So this just delineates how those funds are. And it's an annual resolution that I will bring to you as part of the budget.
And these are standard accounting practice for the district?
Yes.
Okay. We're looking for a motion.
All right, I move to approve the 24-25 GASB fund balance as presented.
I'll second.
Any other discussion or questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Now we move on to this is Jane's night, I tell you, budget appropriation resolution.
Thank you. This resolution corrects appropriation for the 23-24 budget in two funds. The first one is the Special Revenue Fund. The ESSER funds were budgeted more in the 4,000 function because we thought the capital projects expenses would be higher than they were. And so we expended it on technology, on summer school, on other things. And so I need to correct the appropriation to match the expenditures. And the food service fund, we exceeded the appropriation when we went to All Kids Eat Free. We're expending more on salary, on food, on our contract. And so we have the revenue increased as well. And so this will keep us in appropriation in both of those funds.
I have a question about that. Can I
Please go
ask
ahead.
a
Yeah,
question?
please do. Yeah.
So does the increase in funding cover the increased costs?
Yes, it does.
We're not bleeding over into general fund duties and people and activities by doing that.
The way it looks now, we are not. Next year will be a true test because we started in the middle of the year. It's a concern that I have because many districts do go in the red on their food service.
Thank you. I would move approval as presented, or is it time to do that?
That is exactly the time. I was just going to thank you.
I'll second.
Any other discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Insurance renewals.
So this is another annual renewal. We just renewed our workers' comp insurance and our liability insurance. And I don't know if you remember last year, they increased 38%. It was a huge increase. And we've worked really hard to get our workers' comp down. And this year, it's a 9% on our workers' comp and about a 12% on our liability insurance. So much better.
Still an ouch.
Yeah.
Yes. But it's a planned ouch.
Move to approve insurance renewals as presented.
Second that.
I have a question about that.
Questions? Go ahead.
So one or both of these insurance programs internal with our membership to any organizations, or are these standalone policies that are just marketplace based?
They're standalone policies, and PACE is our insurance for liability and workers' comp.
Okay. Do we know that that's a better rate than we would be getting at SAFE, for example?
We do know for liability insurance, definitely, because every school district in the state is in that, and if you went outside of it, your costs would increase. I think it was last year we actually checked into that when we saw such a huge increase.
Have you checked in the workers' compensation rates? I mean, you kind of alluded to that might be, is that something that it'd be interesting to find out anyway?
I have not checked into that.
In a board moment, that was a joke. We might do that at some point. We're looking for a motion, please. Oh, no, we have one on the table. We have in second, so I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Organizational resolutions.
So this just establishes that Andy and I have contract signature rights. Our bank is Umpqua Bank, and the LGIP is our local government investment pool. So it's, again, an annual process that we need the board's approval.
I would move approval as presented.
I'll second.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Moving on to M6, INB, studying controversial issues.
So continuing to move forward on this, you will recall we had a hearing last fall on this, and there was some outcry. We ended up putting together a committee, spent quite a bit of time putting together several different things that we want you guys to look into here. There'll still be a little more work on these as we go forward, but you can see as you kind of peruse that first page, we did end up introducing some changes. We also found a policy in the course of doing this work that we thought was formative to what we're doing. And so if you guys would take a look at the first policy there, we are going to update INB, which is the current policy. We found a policy called program exemption. We are going to delete that policy and include that language in a new policy, IIAA. Policy IIAA refers to instructional content. It creates language regarding state-adopted content standards used in district-adopted instructional resources and materials. It adds language from policy IGBHD. One of the things that we got here was we found ourselves in a little bit of a quagmire because we found more policies that related, and it includes OSBA highly recommended update from March of 2023. It creates language for superintendent or designee to develop administrative regulations for instructional content notification, which we will bring back to you guys, and requests for alternative instructional activity. I recognize that there have been a couple of times this year where parents have been upset because people have receive notification that something is going to be taught. And yet they also, with that notification, were given an opportunity to avoid that. I recognize, however, as well, that we need to be very clear about like when each day we're doing it and how long each day. Because we also had some parents who thought this is a whole week's worth of this, when in fact it was being taught in a health class a little bit of time each day, right? And so we are recommending then the following policies, and you can see them there. And is this an action item tonight? This is an action item tonight.
Adoption of the 2 and the deletion of the 1.
So, and I would just ask that you do them separately. The first motion is to approve the policies. The second one, I'm sorry, the program exemption, is that where I'm at? Is to delete the program exemption, because that will move into where parents can apply for an exemption with an alternate work assignment.
So first motion we're seeking, and we can have discussion.
INB?
Is INB, yeah, move to approve INB and IIAA.
I'll second.
I'll move to approve policies INB and IIAA as presented.
And I'll second.
Any discussion?
So again, state for the record what those policies are.
So IIAA, it creates language so that we have a clear understanding of the state standards. And I think most important, it would be the health standards, right? And then it adds language from policy IGBHD, and thank you, Chris, which includes OSBA highly recommended language for the update. It also directs me to develop administrative regulations for how we notify parents and how specific those notifications are and what the time frame is.
So when this came up last fall,
Stop digging, is that what you said, as I recall?
I remember there being, I won't call it a work group, but
Yeah.
maybe it was a work group, and there was some outreach, and these now come back with the recommendation of the work group to approve? Is that right?
They were the ones that worked on this over a period, 4 meetings, I think?
And they're comfortable with it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
I had a
Yep,
clarification. So on the policy, the INDB or INB, it says notification requirements must be evaluated by the teacher or I'm assuming that's the teacher, but it doesn't say that they have to do anything. They just have to evaluate if they should do it, or is that, so that's up to complete teacher discretion again, if they do it or don't do it?
So we're going to develop and put into place the time frame and the specificity of like when it is being taught each day. An elementary school could, and we did have this happen where they sent out and said it was a whole week. And there were parents who were upset because they thought they were going to have to take their kids out for a whole week just to avoid that. So we want to create that specificity and that timeline.
The notification requirement will be the AR that will spell out what the notification requirement is. So they have to evaluate if there's a notification required. So it basically directs them to, in their process, to look at the notification requirements. And within the notification requirements, they'll know if they need to notify or not notify.
And you were looking at INB, Sean?
Correct. I was looking at number 5. So I bet we don't necessarily have, I might be misspoken here, but we don't necessarily have any input on ARs. So then what I'm getting at is it's looking like we won't necessarily have any control over whether there is notification to parents or not, and what that is regarding and how early or not early that is. Whereas that seems to be, from my hearing from people in the public, that seems like it was the main issue at the beginning. And to have that not addressed in the policy and to be addressed somewhere later kind of feels weird approving this without knowing what that is.
So the ARs are being developed, and they will come back to you as a read-only, because the board doesn't approve ARs, but within the policy, you've directed the superintendent or designee to create the notification requirements and the alternate activity. So that gives in the policy the language of.
Yeah. And Sean, I would be happy to tell you tonight that I would commit to the following things. Sufficient notice, specific notice about the time, and the opportunity for an alternate assignment. Those three things will come.
Yeah, and they'll come back in August so that you guys can see them.
Okay.
By AR, you mean administrative rule?
Yes.
To the policy.
Yep. It's the,
That's being done by the Department of Ed?
no, it's the work group is continuing to work on it.
So it's our administrative rule?
Yes.
Yeah.
So as a practical matter, how often will this happen? How often will there be lesson plans that are outside the curriculum that will require notification?
So in the 2 years that I've been here, I think that year 2, this year just concluded, has been markedly improved in terms of the diminishing of the number of people who were utterly surprised that something was taught without notification. So I think more notification is occurring. I think we could continue to be more specific to take away the idea that parents have the wrong idea about how much of the day is being taught those kind of things.
Well, so we're paying a price, some price, for teaching outside the curriculum, particularly in the area of health, and I guess the cost is suspicion or fear or concern amongst some families and parents.
About 550 students.
And the upside is what?
Well, I think there's a lot of different ways to look at that. I think if you just say, hey, we're not going to teach the state standards, or for example, safe touch, those kind of things. I know a lot of parents have a reaction to that. Do we not teach that standard?
No, I'm not saying that at all. You have to teach what the law requires. And you're telling me it's state law requirements that trigger notification?
Yes.
I got no more questions.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve policies INB and IIAA. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries 3-2. We are on to M7, board policy deletion. And this is IGBHD program exemptions.
And this is related, it's the policy that we found. Trying to get it to where I can read it. Hang on just a second. I may not be able to do that. So this policy was discovered as we were working with this committee. It sat in a different place. And as you can see, it allows parents to request excusal or accommodation in writing and include the reasons for the request and a proposed alternative for an individual learning activity which substitutes for a period of time exempt from the program and meets the goals of the learning activity.
So that's the language that I pulled into the new IIAA to keep that intact on the instructional content side.
So the intent is to delete the competing policy.
Yeah.
Yep. Looking for a motion.
I'll move to delete IGBHD.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? I don't think we have any future agenda items. We're looking at some informational only administrative regulation.
So this is an example of an administrative rule. This is the reflection or the result of the recommendations of the grading work that you heard earlier tonight. These would be what we are taking on, and you can see, I think it's on page 2. There is a striking out of the 50%, and obviously there's a lot of work that those, the administrators and then the teachers on that committee will be doing and keeping track of that. And you guys are going to hear from them as we get going in the fall.
Marvelous. Well, this is going to wrap up my tenure as chairman. And so with that, I want to thank everybody for allowing me to be up here and be in front of you and lead you. And we look forward to having Chairman Morse at the next meeting and Vice Chair Ryan Mattingly. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.